GMO, genetically modified organisms, plants, animals, and some even suspecting that some humans have been genetically modified. Anyway, we have a geneticist here with us in the studio. He is a geneticist at the University of Novena, Professor Cyril Otoika. Hope I got that name correctly.
Yes.
All right. Welcome to TMI.
Thank you very much.
A lot has been said about GMO. You get to see some foreign clubs. People are like, carrying play card, protesting, saying no to GMO. Anything about GMO is deadly. Stop GMO. For the layman, would like to know the meaning of that GMO, genetically modified organism. Prof, over now to you.
Yes, genetically modified organisms. When you say you'll be able to genetically modify an organism, what you present to some of us who are geneticists is that you'll be able to, from onset of that life, be able to transform from the natural state to a desired state, which is human. That's modification. And for you to be able to genetically modify an organism, you must have the parents. When I say parents, the male and the female that gave birth to the one you want to modify. So there must be parents. So if you look at what the world is now presenting to us, like I mentioned a few days ago, when I was addressing the House of Rep Committee on Agriculture, who were on fact findings to find out what exactly are GMOs, I did explain that the world is yet to be told what is behind, or the interest behind the origin of GMOs, because what they have presented to us is not genetically modified organisms, because the process that we know is from outside, imputing a bacteria into an organism. If you from outside try to modify an organism, as a geneticist, what I will read from your interest is that you are trying to create a mutagenic situation, because that is not natural. Because if you go to Google, for those who are interested or who are behind the genetically modified food, if you ask Google to show you pictures of genetically modified food, you see syringe being punctured into a fruit, for example, a fruit of guava, a fruit of mango, then the basic one we have in our kitchen, tomatoes. And that syringe contains what they have referred to as bacteria. So I continue to ask the question, how can you use a bacteria physically to modify an organism? Then the questions that follow is that the tomatoes fruit that they are injecting the bacteria into, you see that picture? Yeah. The maize that they are introducing that substance into, this maize is not an organism. This maize you are looking now is a part of an organism. So genetically, if you want to carry out a genetic process, you go to the parents, not the offspring. Because even the offspring are supposed to serve as another parents to another generation. So what they have prepared, like I have classified it, is biological weapon, which means they promised us that COVID-19 is going to come in variants. So this is another variant.
For real?
Yes, it's another variant of COVID-19. If you ask Google to tell you, this one I'm looking now is tomatoes, is it not?
Yeah.
Good. Tomatoes is a plant. And from all application of agriculture, when you want to produce a plant, you go to the farm, you plant. If you ask Google now, genetically modified food, which farm did they produce it? Any name of any farm? No name. Any state or country that allocated land space for planting and harvesting? None. If you just try, ask Google.
All right.
They own Google.
All right. Now, you just hold on. You're bringing about the biochemist to me, gene modification, gene alteration. Now, you took a look at the picture and said that Some bacteria have been injected into a plant, so to speak, to alter the gene. That might not be the plant that's supposed to be consumed. That might just be the plant that you are trying to alter the gene that are going to plant to give you higher yield. I don't think it's to the advantage of humanity.
The way people talk about gene shows me that we lack serious knowledge in genetics.
Please enlighten us.
Across Africa. You are bringing a bacteria from outside to alter a gene in a fruit. And that fruit that you have genetically modified cannot give birth. That means if you plant it, it cannot germinate. And you are thinking of looking at generations to come in terms of curing hunger. Their interest is two, which they have mentioned. The first interest is that they are pest resistant. The second interest is that they are drought resistant. So for you to now create something that is pest resistant, that means what you have imputed will kill a pest. Pest is an animal. So whatever will kill pest will kill humans.
All right.
So then whatever will serve as herbicides is chemical. So from all indication, they have told us point blank clear that what they have introduced is chemicals.
Okay, hold on now. Now, are you saying right now that this kind of plant, for instance, a variety of variant of cassava or variant of palm fruits that can start sprouting and giving a rise to wonderful produce within 3-4 months, are you saying that these plants being shipped into Africa for agricultural purposes are genetically modified?
Don't call them plants. If you call them plants, you are going against principles of science.
Why would you say so?
Because there is no farm up to today where they planted it and where they harvested it. It's a biological product.
Now, hold on, Professor.
Yes.
Gets in this question.
Good.
If you go to Ministry of Agri, you have variants of cassavas.
Yes.
Variants of palm fruits.
Yes.
Variants of maize.
Yes.
And they planted, they'll tell you the produce will be 10 times more than an ordinary maize, cassava, or palm fruit
Yes.
because of genetically modifying these plants.
Yes.
And they go plant it, they are pest resistant,
Yes.
they are disease resistant,
Yes.
drought resistance, and they give you maximum yield.
Let me-
Are these genetically modified? So I can go and meet them right now in the Ministry of Agri to stop giving out those plants.
If you ask any person, like I did ask during that sitting in House of Rep with Rep Committee,
Yes.
I did ask, is there any person in the whole of that hall with almost 1,000 persons? Have you ever seen, if I ask you now, have you one-on-one handled the genetically modified fruit? Can you answer me?
How can one know without
Have you
tests?
seen anyone?
How can
No.
one know without tests?
But somebody came there as president of Farmers Association nationwide Nigeria,
Yes.
and was with a packet, and that packet was labeled hybrid, telomerase. But telomerase was the first that was classified as genetically modified. I said no, hybridization is far from genetic modification. They have explained to us.
Could you please explain the difference between
Hybrid means,
hybridization and genetic
hybrid means
modification?
on A there is a trait, or you call it characteristics that you desire. Let's use there two.
Okay.
Which is pest resistance. Then there is another one that you have discovered is drought resistance. So you have two. So for any genetic process, then for the other two that you are considering now, one must be a male and the other one a female. So what you do is to bring them together. When you bring them together, following a natural process, allowing them to fertilize, to cross-fertilize, then to arrive at birth, then you technically, naturally move the traits here, which they call the gene, because the trait is being carried by the gene. Because the gene is the basic unit of inheritance. There is word inheritance in any process of improvement, in any process of hybridization. Are you getting me?
Yeah.
So when you bring those genes, you allow them to naturally mix up.
And is that not modification?
That is not the word modification that they have used as GMO concern.
So what's the difference?
The difference is that one follows a natural process where a change in genetic property is equal to a change in phenotype, which is what you see outside, and plus a change in environment, plus a change in interaction between environment and genetic factors and a constant. That's a formula. It's a genetic formula. And that equals to the factors on the other side does not in any condition equate genetic properties. So when you are bringing anything from outside to now create a modification in the traits that is already existing in an organism, you have only been able to induce mutation. Then the difference between mutagenic situation and genetic modification is that one is inheritable. It can go from one generation to another. Then one, mutagenic conditions are not heritable. If you plant it, it will not be able to transfer it to another generation. And that is why for genetically modified organisms, you must go back to the producer to continue to get supply. And remember, something that has been classified as food to cure hunger in Africa will be produced by one company who has not up to now told us that there is land space which we will now calculate whether the land space had the capacity to now produce what we will desire as food in order to cure hunger. Those ones are, nobody is even asking questions about it. So when you now modify based on your interest, you now bring your bacteria or whatever. I have also said in that presentation that it was not bacteria. They are not telling the world the truth. All right. It is heavy metals. When you now bring it inside to achieve a desired purpose, the question now is what you have injected inside. At what point does it go off that fruit before I consume it?
Good question. Anyway, we want to go for a break. It's all about gene mutation. If you are a biochemist or you are into food production, definitely you get to know what Prof is talking about. When we return after this break, we're going to bring it down to a level. Gene alteration giving you rise to a genetically modified organism. You talked about GMO being another variant of COVID-19, and many will find it so difficult to swallow this pill. Please explain.
When you sell bitter pills, I think it's better we observe truth than pretending to understand a process that is completely falsehood. Up to this moment that we are talking, nobody, there is no scientist in this world that has come out openly to give us a direct procedure, scientific procedure that has arrived at genetically modified food or organism. Then, like I've explained before, we are looking at telomerase because it's what we know here, and they have been presenting everywhere. Telomerase, I have said, has father, has mother. But the genetically modified organisms that we are talking about started at the process of preparation of COVID pandemic. I've said it severally. Yes, because there are processes. Science is real and is open. I remember during COVID-19, I mentioned here that Professor Elizabeth, who died 2017, 2019, is a professor of virology. And she was working in Wuhan lab when she mistakenly sniffed what she was preparing. And the symptoms she exhibited are 95% symptoms of COVID-19. I wrote even the past American president who just won back now, Donald Trump. I wrote him one-on-one, and he got my message. He got my letter before he left office. And I did mention to him, don't challenge China. Challenge your scientists who are Americans, Buta, Fauci, and Elizabeth. They work in Wuhan lab. They are scientists, virologists, who produce all these things we are talking about. I mention names because I have facts. You are saying genetically modified food or organisms that we want to eat. Nobody has seen a sample. I have told everybody that we are not yet at the point of interacting with those viruses because I classify them as viruses. When it gets to that time that they will pump them out, then you start seeing them. So the telomerase and whatever they are mentioning now, they are not genetically modified. When genetically modified crops will come, we will see them.
So you're saying right now we are in the clear in Africa We don't have issues with that right now.
Yes. Let me tell you the gap between what I know and what some other persons who are scientists, I feel quite well that they know, but out of compromise, nobody is owing up for truth. You know, South Africa was recent banned GMOs.
GMOs.
But they thought they'd be interacting with GMO. I am a consultant to one or two NGOs in South Africa. And I have explained to them what is coming should be resisted. What has been classified as GMO are drugs. If you want people to understand it, I have been using different concepts. I have even named them as time bomb. That when you consume it, it will blow and explode, and it will result to death. It's a cooked entity. So don't allow any person to deceive you that what has been classified as GMOs that will come, that you will go to farm, you carry it to farm, you plant it and it will germinate, then it will give rise to another generation of that product. No. But it's going to come, and it will come very soon. You know, it comes in variants, it comes in series. So this one now will create a lot of impact in terms of population control. Do you know why? Because it's food.
And everybody wants to consume it.
Everybody wants to consume. And they feel that Africans are hungry. Somebody visited, Bill Gates visited from US and visited Nigeria and was talking about hunger. I was talking about how to make food available. How do you make food available with a substance that cannot regenerate itself? How do you make food available from a substance that our local farmers cannot understand? Have we not been farming? Have we not been producing the crops that we have been consuming? Have we not been eating, growing, and living? In that same presentation, how can somebody who says you are a president of Farmers Association say it is better for us to eat food and die?
It's food
which means they know the food they are bringing for us. So it's not food, it's poison. Because food, you eat food, it enters your body, your cells appreciate it, then they grow, then you are living. But there is another one they call poison. When you take it poison, the cells recognizes it, they start fighting it, it overwhelms the cell, and the cells die, and that is death, and that is where organism ends.
All right, but this time around, some parts of America have been consuming these GMOs.
I would not want you to say that, because I have a friend who is still in America now, because we do research. I am a researcher. When my friend told me he was going to America, I said, okay, fine, you are going on an educative program, you are going for a conference. Get me pictures from the counter in US. He has gone to a series of supermarkets. There are labels GMO, but there is nothing behind the GMO label.
Nothing behind the GMO label?
Nothing behind the GMO label, because they know what it is and they cannot give to their people to eat. Let me say it point blank and loud enough that any reasonable human being cannot give what we are looking at now to you and I to eat as food and live. No way.
All right. Now, but the fear right now in African countries that this GMO will be shipped into the country without a label GMO. So how can an African identify these crops?
But the question is, why did they not label it? And I have insisted on House of Rep member that they should insist that anything that is called GMO, genetically modified organism, should carry a label. Do you know why it's necessary to label it? So that it will now boil down to our own personal interest in terms of choice. To either choose your food, eat and live, or choose your food, eat and die.
Are you not saying choose your poison, eat and die?
If I say poison now, they will say I'm using raw language. So let's use the word food. Food you eat and live, and food you eat and die.
But if you eat food and die, that is poisonous already.
So it now boils down to whoever is now thinking, who is using that brain work to now classify one as poison and classify the other one as food.
Prof, you aside, which other prof in biochemistry that are genetists that are really pushing for the knowledge about GMOs and, of course, the dastardly effect it will have on humans in Africa that are currently in Nigeria pursuing the same cause that you are? Because like you're just like a voice in the wilderness. People are like, what is Prof talking about? Is it not food? How can you eat food and die and all of that?
Yes, see, knowledge, like Hosea 4:6 says,
Yes.
my people perish for lack of knowledge. When you have knowledge and that knowledge, you don't use it to impart on your neighbor, it is not knowledge. Then that could happen when, as a human being, you present yourself as an entity to be compromised. Money. I am not the only geneticist. Somebody taught me. And I have taught some other persons. And we are still in the process of breeding geneticists. In my university, I have a group of students. I am already preparing so that when I leave, they will take over from persons like me who are bold enough to say the truth. Remember, on this same channel, because sometimes these days people refer me as ITV professor. I said yes because ITV is known for truth.
The truth.
Remember that there was a time we started on sickle cell anemia. My first visit to ITV was on sickle cell anemia. And I was watching, because it was a live program,
Yes.
I watched a lady who was even insulting me directly. I was even asking, what kind of professor is this one? But do you know that today, that same lady is part of my advocacy to end sickle cell in Africa?
Wow, that's interesting.
And she is somebody who is living with it. So, technically and cleverly, I made her to understand that this thing I am fighting is not my fight. That she, as somebody who is living with it, should be at the forefront. Today, I praise her and I give her all the grace because she has taken that fight even to a higher level than I do because she is living with it.
All right.
That was COVID. That was sickle cell anemia. Then we came with COVID-19. And
yeah.
I said COVID was a scam at the beginning. That when the real substance that is called COVID will come, that I will make the world know. And I came back here and I asked everybody, up to now, have you been able, has any scientist in any Nigerian university been given an opportunity to handle COVID vaccine? No, because when they give it to you, we will do what Professor Haruna did in Ahmadu Bello University in taking samples of polio vaccine to a laboratory in India and discover that inside polio vaccine, there was heavy metal that will result in the symptoms called polio. Of recent, hope you know that that gentleman has been embarrassed by security functionaries and whatever, that he should keep quiet. How can he keep quiet when it is involving life? Then came COVID-19. COVID-19 with variants. This is another variant. Another one will come very quickly.
Wow.
Because it's all population control factors.
All right.
Have you heard of, what do they call it now? Genetically modified human beings in terms of transgenic and trans this and trans that.
I don't want to go into that.
If that
I
is
wouldn't want to go into
that
that.
will come because it's another process of population control.
All right,
so they
bro.
come in variants.
All right, bro, before we call it a wrap on this segment, as a layman, how can one identify the genetically modified organism in terms of plant and, of course, animals? At least just size. So people get to know that this one is like a genetically modified. We should stay clear of
Do you know the danger in it? Do you know the danger in the science of population control? Genetically modified organism, if you paste it on this table with the natural one that you and I goes to farm to plant and harvest, you cannot differentiate them physically. Do you know why? Because those who went to the lab to produce that biological weapon are scientists too. So physically, you cannot differentiate them. But chemically, you will be able to differentiate them. And what will now lead you to even carry out any genetic analysis or chemical analysis is by labeling, so that those who produce it will be held responsible for the after effect of what is going to cause in terms of killing people.
So they should label it. This is GMO.
They will never agree to label it. Find out. They will never agree. All these ones are supposed to carry label, so that you will now make that choice to eat and live or eat and die. If I see a process like this, my brother, I will better remain in hunger situation than to consume what I know and I'm seeing like this, that is made by you and I, which is humans. It's produced by human, not nature. And it's for a purpose, and the purpose is population control. So genetically modified food must be labeled. We must insist. If it is not labeled, nobody should allow it come into this country. Nobody should allow it come into Africa. I have said, and I will continue to say, that genetically modified organisms are time bomb prepared in order to reduce population.
Thank you so much, Prof. Your last line is quite scary. Very, very scary. Well, we have men like you, at least our line of defense in Africa. Bring these things, label it, let's test it to get to know if they are genetically modified. Prof, I'm making a promise that I'm still going to have you on other segment of the show to call you to delve into details how this is related to Africa's birth control, poisoning, COVID-19 and all that. But if you're watching us right now, just be warned. GMO is real. In America, they're protesting against it. And of course, the lesson of action, bring it down to Africa. They don't know anything. But people like Prof and some others that are watching keenly, you have to say no to genetically modified organism. Prof, thank you so much for coming on today's show. Quite scary, but the truth must be said.
Thank you very much. It's not scary. Just say no to genetically modified organisms. It's as simple as that.
Just say no to genetically modified organisms.